This week we read in the portion of V'eschanon where Moshe, it was decreed that he should not enter into Eretz Yisrael because of the Mei Meriva. The question is, what exactly was the sin? And at the last moment, towards the end of his life, he begins supplicating Hashem to annul the decree, to allow him to enter. And he's sharing this with Klal Yisrael, V'eschana l'Hashem b'isei lemor. And I supplicated Hashem at that moment, saying, so Rashi cites Chazal that the term doesn't say V'espalel l'Hashem. Eschanan, what he used the term Chinun, Chino, supplication in the context of God's graciousness. God, you are gracious. In Chinun b'chol mokem el loshem matnas chinom. He's supplicating God by saying, although I'm unworthy, you should do it purely based on your unending graciousness, chesed. Alpi sheish lem tzadikim litlos b'maseim atovim. Although the tzaddikim can attribute the deservingness to their good deeds, they only ask of God a gift which is given gratis. Why? What was the basis? How did Moshe know he had a right to ask for something although he's undeserving? That God revealed to Moshe, I'll be gracious to those who I am gracious. Therefore he chose the term V'eschanon. Once mentioned, name of the Chofetz Chaim, that the Gemara tells us that the reason why Yerushalayim was destroyed is because they were Omid al Hadin, because they were very demanding and deliberate when it came to judgment. So he goes to explain that the Rambam rules in Hilchos Tshuva that how do you classify a person who's a tzaddik? If the majority of his accomplishments are positive, his classification is tzaddik. And what is Rasha, evil? If the majority of his deeds or misdeeds are negative. And who makes this evaluation? Is it a quantitative evaluation? Because the Rambam says you could have one sin which is equivalent of many good deeds, or one deed which supersedes and subsumes many sins. So he says only the Kel Deos, only God who knows all, only He can make this evaluation. Only Hashem could make this evaluation. So it's not quantitative, it's qualitative, and it's based on God's measuring rod, His scale, how He evaluates it. So he goes to explain that we know in life, or the way God created the world, everything is measure for measure. Measure for measure. The way you behave, God responds in a similar vein. So he explains, the Gemara tells us that a person who's a mavater, he's willing to look away, look aside, not to be demanding. So the Gemara tells us that a person who's mevater, mevatla lo al kopshov, God is even willing to look away from the defiances. As you looked away when somebody faulted you, offended you, victimized you, you were willing to look away and not to make a claim, although you had a basis to make a claim. God, although He has a claim, based on the principle of measure for measure, midah keneged midah, will not make the claim. So he goes to explain, we find that there are many levels one could perform a mitzvah. One could perform a mitzvah lishma. And there are many levels of doing for the sake of the mitzvah. The Ramchal writes in Silsil Shorim that although if one does a mitzvah for a share in the world to come, that's considered lishma. That is lishma. That's doing for the right reason. Because God only created existence, so man should be deserving of a share in the world to come. Every Jew has a share in the world to come. But that's not the ultimate level of Lishma. You do it purely as subservience. It's a privilege out of reverence to serve God. Even that's a more advanced level of Lishma. And there are many levels of low Lishma. Why a person does it even with an ulterior motive. What is the ulterior motive? And each one is evaluated based on what the mitzvah is infused in. As I always say, when we speak about the Rambam goes and codifies the 13 Ikrei Emunah, tenets of Jewish faith, belief, one of them is that God knows the thoughts of man. And then he writes, there is schar v'onish, there's reward and punishment. Now, a person does a deed. First, God knows the actions and the thoughts of man. If, let's say, he only knows the action, he doesn't know the thought. So how do you evaluate? Is it lishma? Is it shlo lishma? Was it done with the proper intent? Not. And the many levels and the nuances of what is and what's not. But if God knows the thoughts and the feelings of man, he's able to make this evaluation. As a result of that, the reward which is meted out, or the punishment, which is one is culpable to be punished, it's exactly to the degree that he failed or to the degree that he succeeded. Therefore, these are tenets of Jewish belief. That's schar v'onish. If a person has a claim against another, so he explains, the Chofetz Chaim, that what is Rov Zochius? The majority are positive. Of course, if you add up the number of good deeds he did, it's a majority. The failings, the infractions are a minority. But how do you evaluate that? If a person is mevater, even somebody does something, it's not perfect, and you accept it, and you accept him, and you value him, based on the principle of midah keneged midah, although your deed, your action, is far from perfect, as you valued and you accepted and embraced the person with all his failings, and you accepted him as if he's made the grade, God will accept your mitzvah as if you made the grade, although the mitzvah did not make the grade. As a result of that, the majority raised the majority, although qualitatively speaking, it really did not make the grade. And the sin, although the sin itself is what, once based on reckoning, there should be liability and culpability, but because as you did not fault the person for his behavior, God will not fully fault you for your behavior. So he'll minimize the sin. The sin will be minimized, although the person may come from a background we should have known better. He's more learned, or it was more deliberate. You looked away, God looks away. That's midah keneged midah. But what about if you omer al adin? You're demanding, you want your pound of flesh, chas v'sholem. You want every aspect of what you have a right to. Based on principle of midah keneged midah, measure for measure, God says, as you dealt with your fellow, that's how I'll deal with you. If that is the case, although initially you may have the majority of his actions are positive, but they can be whittled down to minority. And the negative, which is a minority, could actually be magnified and elevated to become a majority. So based on this principle of what? Of midah keneged midah, to what degree were you mevater, were you not mevater, that will determine what exactly, what dimension of mitzvah was the mitzvah. The Gemara tells us that if a person sees problems cropping up in his life, pain, suffering, illness, the person should introspect. Yifashish b'masov. You should introspect and do a self-accounting, an introspection, to try to locate where did you exactly fail. Let's say a person did the introspection and things continue to persist. So the Gemara tells us in Brachos, Yitla b'bittul Torah. Attribute it that you did not study properly or sufficiently. So the Vilna Gaon asks a famous question, which is an obvious question. if the person introspected and the introspection was thorough, so if that's the case, what do you mean you should attribute it to Bittul Torah, to the not studying sufficiently? So you'd say, why? Because maybe when you did your introspection, maybe you overlooked that. But if you overlooked that, you could have overlooked other things. And if you didn't overlook anything, and you was truly thorough, so why Torah? Evidently, when you did your introspection, you didn't come upon the issue of Bittul Torah, of not studying sufficiently. That's the question that Vilna Gaon asks. So Marishiva Zech Tzarech Livrocha answered, used to say, the Torah is a very interesting type of mitzvah. The Torah tells us, a person has to study continuously. What about a person has to earn a livelihood? He's permitted. If a person has to eat, has to sleep, has to take out time to provide for his family, or to spend time with his family, that's not Bittul Torah. A person needs a degree of relaxation. That's not considered Bittul Torah. And it's not contradictory to studying continuously. Because whatever your needs are as a human being, of course, God allows you to take out time to provide for those basic amenities which a human being needs. But let's say one day you need an hour relaxation, and tomorrow you only need 50 minutes of relaxation. So the 10 minutes are not really justified. So it's something which continuously has to be adjusted. Continuous. So the person, well, I always take out this period of time. There's no such thing as always. It's continuously adjustable. So as a result of that, it's so difficult. Anything else, was it kosher, was it not kosher? That I embarrassed the man, did I not? Was it lashon or was it not? That's an evaluation. Was it not? Was it shatnez? Was it not? Did I chas v'sholom, did I desecrate the Shabbos? Did I not desecrate the Shabbos? Whatever it is. But here, because it's continuously based on the moment, was it justified, not justified, and the moment is the determining factor, so if that's the case, so based on your original analysis, introspection seemed to be everything was justified, but it continues to persist. Yitla b'Bittul Torah attributed to that because evidently your evaluation wasn't correct. Because what you justified to be permitted, it wasn't permitted, and therefore it falls under the guise of Bittul Torah, therefore attributed to that. Tzaddikim, because of their understanding of their responsibility to God, whatever grade they achieve, they're always suspect on themselves that maybe they haven't achieved enough. And if they haven't, it's a claim. The Mesillas Yesharim, the Ramchal writes, we speak about Yiras Chet. A person has an obligation, V'yireisem Elokecho, on the Hashem, one has to fear God. What's fear? The Rambam writes that the most inferior level of fear, which is something which has relevance to children, is fear of punishment. Meaning, you're actually saying, if I could get away with it, I do the wrong thing. But unfortunately, God, you're going to punish me. So is that being God, the subject of God? Is it total disrespect? But what's the ultimate? Fear is out of reverence. It's awe. But it's even more. Now, to what degree do you revere God? Even when you do the right thing, you were worried maybe you didn't do it right enough. Maybe it's flawed. Maybe it's not perfect. That's Yiras Chet. Yiras Chet could be that I'm concerned, you never know what's lurking, and you continuously in trepidation, maybe I'll do the wrong thing. That's the degree you revere God. Let's say you did the mitzvah. You worried, maybe I didn't do the mitzvah sufficiently. But factually, let's say a person is at a level where you should do the mitzvah more perfect, and he doesn't, due to a distraction, due to a lack of focus. If that person's at that level, there's a claim against him. Person's not at the level, there's no claim. But if you're at that level, there is. So we're talking about tzaddikim, people who are devoutly righteous. That means that are a level that they could perform at an exceptional level. What would be if they should somehow fail and they don't perform as they should perform? It's a claim against them. So what are they going to do? They're going to attribute their worthiness to their good deeds. They're always suspect that the good deeds they've fallen short. And if you fall short, then there's a claim. And the claim is a very serious claim. Therefore, Tzaddikim, they are tzaddikim because of the way they perceive themselves and perceive God. And they revere God, therefore they can't attribute it to their own deeds. Therefore they say, God, we may be totally undeserving, or whatever it may be, but be gracious. Your graciousness, because you revealed to Moshe, Moshe says, I'll be gracious to the one who I'll be gracious to. That's the reason why they don't attribute it to the good deeds. The Gemara tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktik im chasidav kochot hasara. God is exacting with his chasidim, is devoutly, scrupulously pious, as much as if they deviate as much as a hairbreadth. To that degree. So if that's the case, you have people, tzaddikim, chasidim, Moshe Rabbeinu. Hakri, what happens as much as an iota? He did not meet the grade. It's midas hadin, we're talking the attribute of justice. So based on the attribute of justice that we just said, if God evaluates your deed based on the law of justice, you cannot come out whole. You cannot come out unscathed. Therefore, tzaddikim understanding the yardstick and the microscope they put under to make this evaluation, they say, God, we want matmaschinam. We want it should be gratis. Because you said, I'm gracious to those who I'm gracious to. So I was thinking that when we speak about that HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktik im chasidav kechut hasara, we understand every no tzaddik, two tzaddikim are on the same level. Not at the same level. So if the principle is because you should have known better, because you have focus, you learn it, and all whatever it may be, so who is the ultimate in terms of clarity and the one who should have not failed? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the ultimate. So if God is going to be exacting with him even more than ever, and at what level? So let's talk now. The Gemara tells us in the tractate of Avodah Zarah, it discusses God's morning schedule. What's God's morning schedule? So the Gemara says the first 3 hours of the day, God sits and studies Torah. The second 3 hours of the day, God judges the world. The third 3 hours of the day, God provides sustenance, mikarnei re'im ad beitzei kinim, from the largest creature to the most almost microscopic creature. And the fourth hour, 3 hours a day, he studies Torah with Tinoka Shebes Rabban, with children who passed away before the age of Bar Mitzvah. He studies Torah with their neshamas, with their souls. That's what he does. So the Gemara says that a Jew who is not praying with a minyan on Rosh Hashanah, and he has to say Musaf, he should not pray during the first 3 hours of the day. Why? Because it's the most severe level of judgment. So the Gemara asks a question, but if you tell me you shouldn't pray during the second 3 hours of the day, because you don't have a minyan, you have what we call the merit of the tzibur. So we understand, because it says the second 3 hours of the day, God judges the world. You don't want to be under the guise of judgment. But we said that the first 3 hours of the day, God sits and studies Torah. So seemingly it should be okay for him to pray even as an individual, without a tzibur, without a minyan. So the Gemara answers that Torah is unadulterated truth. As Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei, emes k'nei val timkor. Acquire truth, don't sell truth. Acquire it. Truth is unadulterated. What's unadulterated truth? If you ask a person, is it kosher or not kosher? There's no compromise position. It's either yes or no. Everything is exact. So when God studies Torah, in what mode is God? In the most exacting mode. So if you go and you supplicate God during that period of time, you don't want to be under his microscope. Because everything is emes. This is the ultimate time of Chosamish al Kodesh Emes. The signet of God is truth. Therefore, unless you have Schus HaTzibur, you have the merit of the Tzibur, praying with a minyan, you should not say the Musaf during that period of time. The second 3 hours, where God judges, or judgment, within judgment is Rachmi. There could be mercy within judgment. But because it's not the time of the emes, Torah is emes, is truth. Acquire truth, don't sell truth. That's the reason. What was Moshe? The Gemara tells us in one location that a judge, he should try to encourage mediation. Try to encourage mediation, which is called in Hebrew pishara. Pishara is mediation. Why? Because if you mediate between two people and each person is agreeable, each one walks away satisfied. Otherwise, they're not satisfied. One feels he's been victimized, the other person was favored. Each one agrees to mediation. There's a compromise. They both walk away satisfied. So it says Aaron, he always encouraged pshara, and that's the way he would adjudicate the case between the two defendants. Pshara, mediation, compromise. Moshe Rabbeinu never, ever did pshara, ever did compromise. Moshe Rabbeinu's position was, Yaakov hadin esahor. Let the law pierce the mountain. There's a mountain, and it's contrary to what the law is. You destroy the mountain. Remove it. Nothing stands in the way of the din, of the law. Why? So I asked, if the Gemara says mitzvah lasus pshara, there's a mitzvah to encourage pshara. Moshe Rabbeinu should have tried to encourage the compromise. But it says Moshe Rabbeinu never did. Who was Moshe? Moshe is the pillar of Torah. He is the personification of Torah. He's the conduit of Torah. If that's the case, his essence is what is Torah. What is Torah? Din, it's emes. Someone who epitomizes unadulterated truth, anything less than what is correct should not be done. Therefore, Moshe, he would never, ever even suggest the compromise position to mediate. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was din. He is justice at the most extreme level of truth, unadulterated truth. So Moshe, if that is your level, if what happens you compromise on that, what is your level of culpability? More than someone else. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktek im tzadikim chut hasar of Moshe Rabbeinu is a whole different level. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he's come before God, especially to the Beit Meriva, he instead of speaking to the rock, he struck the rock, according to Rashi's interpretation. This was his failing. So what? God, what do you want? Compromise. God, I had a blind spot for the moment. Moshe, within what you represent, which is emes, is always absolute clarity. Clarity and grasping, understanding it on a divine level, because you're fully permeated with holiness. How could this happen? So therefore, at what level is he judged? This is the most extreme level of what? Of judgment. This is Torah. This is the equivalent of the first 3 hours when God studies Torah. So how do we understand? So what's even the consideration? Right? God, I'm not asking based on anything other than, has no relevance to me. Gratis. No. Why should God do it gratis? Why? I'm gracious to him, gracious. But if we're saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktek im tzadikim chut hasara, and there's such a level of culpability, why should God be gracious to you? For what reason? Why should he be gracious to you? So I think the reason why he should be gracious to Moshe, what does Moshe want to live? Does Moshe want to live for himself? Every time he supplicated God on behalf of Klal Yisrael, God at one time offered him, you'll be the future. I'll start a new nation from you. He wouldn't hear of it. All that matters is Kavod Shamayim, is God's glory. Nothing less than that. So why does Moshe want to continue on? That he should live? Or because he's the one who's actually is going to facilitate, through Klal Yisrael, the ultimate level of Kavod Shamayim. Moshe's leadership is Pnei Chama. He's the equivalent of the sun. What's Yeshua? Yeshua is a mere reflection of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what do I want? It's not me. If it's me for me, okay, why should I give you a gift gratis? But it's not me for me. It's me for Klal Yisrael. So if you're judging me for me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktek im chasidiv chut hasara, exacting within the context of emes kenei val timkor, which is not survivable. That's if you're judging me for me, but me, it's versus Klal Yisrael. What is my value to Klal Yisrael? It has eternal, infinite value. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, sorry, I don't want to hear about it. Why? Because ultimately Moshe Rabbeinu didn't realize, as the Rechaim HaKadosh explains, Because if Moshe would have gone to Eretz Yisrael and built the Beis HaMikdash, and the Jews would have failed, the Beis HaMikdash couldn't be destroyed. Because the handiwork of Moshe was eternal, as the Mishkan was eternal. And why was Tisha B'Av a Moed? Only because God's wrath went on the stones and the brick and the wood. So therefore Klal Yisrael was spared. But if Moshe builds the Beis HaMikdash, Klal Yisrael Chas v'Shalom cannot be spared. So Moshe, the basis for your claim is, it's not for me, it's for Klal Yisrael. But you don't understand. But if it's Klal Yisrael, there is no Klal Yisrael. If your leadership takes them into Eretz Yisrael, there is no Klal Yisrael. Therefore it has to be Yeshua. Yeshua, who he is only a mere reflection of who you are, even though the leadership is at a lesser level, but we're guaranteed that the Jewish people will be eternal. They will survive, even though they fail. That's the reason. So it was a misunderstanding. But Moshe, nothing really changed. Moshe Rabbeinu, his whole intent, Chas v'Shalom, was never himself. Never. It was only Kovod Shemayim, it was only Klal Yisrael, that his leadership was one of a kind of leadership. That's why he wanted it. I asked the question, the Ramchal writes in the Derech Hashem, the Way of God, he speaks, why did God create existence? Because God is a meitiv, is tov. God is good, is the essence of good, in the most absolute form of goodness. And God, good does goodness. So what's the ultimate goodness that he could do? Create a human being who could be a beneficiary of his goodness. And his goodness is the ultimate goodness. Because God is good in the absolute sense. So we ask the question, so why do you have to create man where he has choice and he could fail? Create a human being, put him in the world to come, and he should only bask in God's holiness, in God's radiance. Why do you have to create a person within a context of free choice, that if he chooses correctly, he's deserving, and if he fails, he's liable? The most severe level of what? A punishment. Why? He says something phenomenal. He says, when we speak about God, who is God? God, whoever he is not attributed to anything but himself. And in the words of Ramchal, and the Rambam also uses the same terminology in other contexts, God is Mucher HaMetzius. He is what he is because of what he is. He's not dependent or contingent on anything else. He's fully independent. That's who God is. A human being, to be able to cleave and to have a relation with God, whatever is possible to bring it as close as what God is, God wanted him to be in that context, to be the ultimate beneficiary of the goodness, which I'm going to explain. If a man would just be a beneficiary of God's goodness, but he has nothing to do with creating that goodness, then the likeness, now we speak about the relationship you can have with God. You're going to bask in his presence. What relevance do you have to God? You have no relevance. What about if the basis for my goodness is it's attributed to myself? So that I advanced myself, it's attributed to myself. That I'm more spiritualized, I attribute it to myself. So if that's the case, that's the ultimate likeness to God. As God, whatever he is, it's only attributed to him. It's not attributed to anybody but himself. Identically, the person who chooses correctly, why is he deserving? Because it's attributed to his action that he chose to do the right thing. So it's also attributed to himself. So if that's the case, he will be the beneficiary of the likeness, the commonality, the compatibility which has been created is the ultimate within the possibility of creating commonality with God. So he'll be the greatest beneficiary of the goodness of God because of the commonality which has been established. So that's the question. The tzaddikim, they don't ask. They say, God, reward us based on your graciousness. Matnas chinam. It's gratis. But if it's gratis, so that means it's not earned. That's what you're asking for. So then you have no relevance to God. So within the context of the concept of creation, that is the Tzelem Elokim, that's the image of God. that you have choice. As the Seforno says, what's Tzelem Elokim? Just as God, no one dictates to him. Man has choice, has free choice. That's the Tzelem Elokim. You have the ability to choose and to determine what direction your life takes. So what's v'chanose sherochom? God, give me a ma'adas chinam. It's gratis, so then it's not attributed to you. So how do we understand it? There's a famous Rabbeinu Yonah, which he mentions this in his famous work, Gates of Repentance, Shari Tshuva, and his commentary on Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers. He writes that all mitzvos in the Torah are considered paparos to Yiras Shamayim. It would be like the equivalent of an appetizer to the entree, to the main course. Why? He says if a person, anything a person does, any mitzvah he does, positive or any negative commandment that he does not transgress. Why? Because God says you're not permitted to do it. So every time he does anything, makes a decision to do or not to do, why does he do and why does he not do? Because he believes in God and he understands he's beholden and there's liability and there's culpability and God rewards. So what is that all? So everything is an expression of Yiras Shamayim. So every mitzvah is coupled and touched with Yiras Shamayim. It's an expression of fear of God. Whatever fear means, whether it means fear of punishment, whether it means reverence, but everything we do and live as a Jew is an expression of Yiras Shamayim. But when you do a mitzvah, each mitzvah is unique in its own right. So what's the all-encompassing? All-encompassing is Yiras Shamayim. Therefore, he writes that all mitzvahs are only the equivalent of paparos, an appetizer, to the entree. That's Rabbeinu Yonah. Now, the tzaddik, why is he asking to be given reward gratis? Because he feels he failed. If you don't believe in God, there's no such thing as you failed. As we say, one writes his own script. What is, what's not. So that he's asking to be given the gift gratis, that's bechira. That is choice. How do you see it? How do you perceive? How do you perceive your responsibility to God? Yiras chet, maybe I failed. What do you mean maybe I failed? That's only an expression to what degree you Yori Shamayim. What degree do you revere God? So the basis for this request is that. Is the Yiras Shamayim. Is the choice. So it's not, that is, so why am I deserving of the graciousness of God when I ask for it? Why am I asking? What God does on his own, that God does on his own. But when I'm asking for that, but why am I asking for that? Why does the tzaddik ask for that? He minimizes himself only because of his dimension of Yiras Shamayim. To what degree he reveres God. As a result of that, how do I attribute why God has been gracious to him? Because he recognizes his own foibles and his own shortcomings and his own deficiencies that you never know. That's why I'm asking for gratis. That's why. That's the ultimate. This beautiful word. The Gemara says in Sota, Moshe Rabbeinu was supplicating God to go in. So Hashem says, why do you want to go in? Do you want the reward? I'll give you the reward. As if you did go in and perform the mitzvos which are dependent on the land, it'll all be a credit to your account. That's what God says. Is that what you want? So they ask the obvious question. Pirkei Avos we read, every Jew, when you serve the master, it's not be for the sake of reward. I mean, it's almost an insult. Chas v'shalom. Hashem says, Moshe, why do you want to go in? You want to be rewarded? I'll give you the reward. Is there even the consideration? Moshe wants the reward. Moshe is onav mikol adam. Nachnu Moshe. There's not a trace of self in Moshe. There's no self-interest in anything. So what's Hashem saying? What is God saying to him? Do you want to go in because you want to be rewarded? You want that it should accrue the mitzvahs that are dependent on the land, which right now you don't have. That should be attributed to your account, to your mitzvah account. So how do we understand that? So they say something, somebody printed a footnote in a certain work, writes that why did God create existence? Because a tov is meitiv. One who's good in the absolute sense does goodness. So when Moshe wanted reward, it wasn't that he should be the recipient of reward, that he should be beneficiary of God's reward, that God should be able to fulfill his will of creation. That's why. Whatever is the will of God, that's what I want. So if I could facilitate and create a context that his will should be fulfilled, I want it. Not that I should be the beneficiary, but rather that God's will should be able to be fulfilled. So it has no relevance to Hamisham Shal Rav Shal Maskal B'Pras. Serve the master not for the sake of reward. When a person serves the master, what does he serve the master for? That he should be that he should be the beneficiary. When you serve God, it's not to be the beneficiary. That is your purpose. The Maharal writes, he says something beautiful. A human being, no human being is a master of another human being. He may capture a person. He may subjugate a person. But was the person who's being subjugated, was he created by God to serve the other master? Definitely not. So when a man says, I work for a person, I have a right to demand compensation, remuneration. I have a right to that. Was I created to serve you? So I'm offering you a service, I have a right to ask for a wage. But a human being, when you serve God, why were you created? You were created to serve. That's the reason why you have no right to ask. You have no right to ask. A human being, of course, you have a right to ask. But God, were you created specifically for that? You have no right to do it. The motivating factor should not be for the sake of reward. So the question is even stronger. The answer is, Moshe, exactly, I'm doing why I was created. To serve you. And what is serving God? To do the will of God. What does God want? That man should be a beneficiary. Not that I should be the beneficiary. That God wants man to be the beneficiary. That's the emphasis. Not the person himself. Read in this week's parsha, there's a mitzvah of Kabbalah Somach Shemayim. The Jew has to accept the yoke of God upon himself twice a day. B'shachva v'kamecha, in the evening and during the morning, when we rise. In the first portion of the Shema, we say, V'ahavte es Hashem Elokecha, you should love God, v'chol levovcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol modecha, with all your heart, all your soul. Even, as the Gemara tells us, I feel noten nafshecha, even it means dying, to sanctify His name, or it means giving it all away materially, give away all your possessions, or give of yourself. You have to forego basic amenities of life, comforts of life, for the sake of God. You're willing to forsake all that for the sake of God. That's all an expression of your love for God. To what degree should you love God? With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your possessions. Possession doesn't only mean material possession. It means, what about your own personal comforts? Your time. I'm willing to give my time for God. So the Medrash tells us, and in the second portion of the Shema, is Voyim Shemoah. Voyim Shemoah El Mitzvosai. If you listen to heed my commandments, which I'm commanding you, to serve Him, B'chol levavchem u'v'chol nafshechem, with all your hearts and all your souls. The rains will come in that time. V'asafte degonecha, v'siroshcha v'yitzarecha, all the various types of harvests. Okay? V'asafte degonecha. So there's a medrash The Midrash says that at Sinai, God put a mountain over our heads. So the Midrash asks, if we already said Nasa v'nishma, we already accepted unequivocally, why did God put the mountain over our heads? So the Midrash answers, the Midrash Tanchuma, that initially when he offered the Torah, he offered the Torah Shebechsav, the written law. The written law, which is concise, not that difficult, we accept it. But Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, which is unending, and there are details and subcategories, and all kinds of ramifications and applications, and to be able to come upon its truth, it needs an investment of a lifetime, and you have to deny yourself every comfort to be available for that. They weren't so willing to forego all that. God says, either you accept, or Shem take for aschem. You're going to be buried under the mountain. And they accept it. This is the Midrash Tanchuma. The only one who really could succeed in applying himself properly to the oral law, to be able to elucidate it and to come upon its truth, you have to love God to such a degree that you'll serve Him with all your heart, all your soul, and all your material. What does this mean? Lamedcho sheparshu rishon shebekriya shema ein bo pirush matan schora b'olam hazeh. In the first portion, there's no mention of any reward. The person is willing to give his heart, his soul, and his possessions. As it says in the second portion. That's the reward for doing the mitzvah. These people are not the Talmudists who apply themselves to that degree. People are willing to give their hearts and give their lives. There's no mention all your possessions in the second portion. To teach you, a person who loves wealth and pleasure, because it's one or the other. Each one is contradictory to the other. Tsar Godlov needs a tremendous amount of application, which is painful because you have deprivation and lack of sleep. Therefore, how does the reward manifest itself? It has nothing material. Since the investment is fully foregoing material, therefore the reward's not material. There's no mention. But the person who has an interest in material, so what do you value? You value the material, God will provide the material. Safta de gonecho, you bring in your harvest, so on and so forth. Okay? That's the medrash. There's a famous argument in the Gemara in Brachos between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon Yochai. What is the prescription of life? How does one invest his life? So the Gemara says, there's a verse which states, Lo yomish mipi sefer haTorah hazem mipicho, that the Torah should not be removed from your mouth. Does it literally mean that? That every moment of your existence you have to study Torah? Talmud Lom v'savta de gonecho. Portion says you're permitted to take a break to bring in your harvest. What does that mean? Hanig ben minin derech eretz divrei bishmal. Meaning, you live as you have to live. Whatever is required to maintain your existence, you do. And that's not contradictory to actually what we call bittul Torah. Of course, it's a necessity. Reb Shimon Yochai Omer, so Reb Shimon says, Efshe Odom Choresh B'shas Charisha, is a possible person, he plows in the plowing season. V'zorea B'shas Zriya, and he sows, he plants in the planting season. V'kotze B'shas Ktsira, and he reaps in the harvest season. V'dosh b'shas disho, and he threshes in the threshing season. V'zoreh b'shas haruach, and he winnows when the wind blows. Torah matei, when he's going to have time to study Torah, he's going to be preoccupied in the material. But we know there's a principle, Imein kemach ein Torah. We live in a physical world, we have to sustain ourselves. If the Jews are doing the will of God, God will have others to do your bidding. Shenemar, the strangers, they will come and they will shepherd your sheep, your flocks. But when Jews are not doing the will of God, then you have to do your own bidding. Shenemar, you'll bring in your own harvest. Not only we have to do your own bidding, you'll have to do other people's bidding. What exactly is this about? The Gemara tells us in two locations that one's yearly allocation stipend is determined on Rosh Hashanah to cover you for the year. That means it's yours. So if it's yours, seemingly, what do you have to do to get it? Right? It should be direct deposit. But there's no direct deposit. It doesn't exist. You have to take an initiative. To what degree do you have to take the initiative? To what degree? Whatever you get is yours. But to get what's rightfully yours, what has to transpire? So the Mesillas Yesharim, Ramchal writes that when Adam Arishon, Adam ate of the tree of knowledge, he was cursed. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. That is the prerequisite for the withdrawal of what's rightfully yours. You have to meet that criteria. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Not a problem. But everybody has a different standard what's by the sweat of your brow. A person who's committed to his spirituality, and he's pained when he has to infringe and pinch on that time to invest it in the material or to take out. He's pained. Even the smallest degree of time. That's pain. That's Ze'es HaPecha. Do you know what this cost me? Hilazokin. He only chopped enough wood, enough to give his wife to support the family and to pay the entrance fee, to hear the shir, to hear the lecture from Shmai Vavtalyon. And when he couldn't hear it, what did he do? Went on the rooftop to listen through the skylight, which he was so immersed, it snowed 6 feet on top of him. He almost died of hypothermia. They had to violate Shabbos to make a fire to warm him. So what was Torah to Hillel Zokin? It was life. It's like taking him away from life. There was a story. One of the Rosh Yeshivas of Ponovich, time Rav Shachzeit, his name was Rav David Pabarsky. And he already was a man in his 90s. He was a widower. His wife passed away. And he had a student who would sleep in the house with him to attend to all his needs. And he wasn't well. And the doctor gave orders that he's not permitted to leave the house to go to the yeshiva to study in the base medrash. He's not permitted. It's a question of life-threatening. Pikuach nefesh. So the student has to make sure he does not leave the house, the apartment. One night in the middle of the night, he woke her up, went to the base medrash to study. He had his full faculties. And they didn't know what to do. You know, the student's not going to in any way do anything disrespectful to stop him. So he said, we have to consult with the doctor. So the doctor said, although going to the study hall, base medrash, is life-threatening, but denying him that is even to a greater degree life-threatening. Therefore, let him do what he has to do. If he wants to go, let him go. You know what that means? A person is so immersed in Torah to such a degree, denying him the right to study has a greater concern of putting his life in jeopardy than going to the study hall, which is the physical sense. Okay? So what's Ze'ez HaPecha Torah Lechem for this kind of person? If he has to pick up the phone call for a second to speak to a stockbroker, where it's going to be a return on an investment. 2 minutes. Unfortunately, I had to. The Chofetz Chaim writes, there was a story, the Chofetz Chaim's closest students was a Ruchanan Wasserman, Zev Tzarech Livrocho, Hashem Yinokim Domo, and the Ponovich Rov. They studied together. And they were studied together, and they saw that the Chofetz Chaim cites a certain work in his commentary on Shulchan Aruch, in the Be'er Halacha, and they went to their Rebbe, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. So they wanted to see if the lights were on. They saw on. They knocked on the door gently. He opens it. He asked them, do you have this work? He says, I borrowed this sefer 80 years ago, 75 years ago. Haven't had it since. And when I recorded it, it was from memory. And therefore, I don't have it. And he had the bookcase in the Chofetz Chaim's house was a few boards knocked together, and there was svarim on them, on the shelves. And when the Chofetz Chaim looked at the svarim on the shelf, he groaned. He groaned. So they asked him, why is the Rebbe groaning? Is he in pain? Something happened. He says, you don't understand. We have to have svarim. We have to have holy books. But holy books cost money. Cost money means you have to earn. You have to take out time to earn the money. Money is time. So that time that I had to take out to earn the money to buy the svarim, I wasn't able to study during that time. Therefore, that's why I'm what we call yish. That's why I'm krechzing for that reason. That's why I'm groaning and moaning for that reason. You ever hear such a thing? A person has a minute to go out, fresh air, or whatever it is, or to earn something, which is a profit. You moan and groan. People say, you say shechionu, right? Thank God. Somebody knocked on my door and gave me a business opportunity. But what's the cost factor? There's going to be a void. There's going to be a vacuum here. You can't imagine what kind of charity I'm going to give. Understand? But what about Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam? What about that? But you know what it means to give charity. You know what it means to be acknowledged by other people. You know what covet means. You know what this means. But of course the person doesn't say that. That's all on the sub-level. Right? That's subliminal. Which for the person is not so subliminal. That's in his conscience. Okay? Rav Shimi Yochai says, Torah Mateo Leum. What's going to be with Torah? People are occupied. So what's Osin Ritzon Shel Mokum? The first portion of the Shema speaks about with your heart, with all your life, and all your material possessions. It means even your physical amenities. He says, whoever loves Osher Tainug, he cannot succeed in Torah Sheba'al Peh. Because you have to be fully selflessly committed at all costs. And if not, you cannot come upon its truth. You have to have that level of dedication, spiritualization. So what's Oser Ritzon Shel Mokum? Of course the person is observant, a tzaddik. He's a tzaddik. He could even be a chosid. He is a true chosid. Ein Amoritz. A person. Chosid, you're everything, whatever you're supposed to be. But you still could be a chosid, Ein Oser Ritzon Shel Mokum. You're not doing the will of God. You got to do your own bidding. You're fully invested in my project, carte blanche. Other people, I will get other people to do your bidding. They'll shepherd your flocks, whatever has to be done. You just have to fulfill the criteria of Zeh Sapecha Tocha Lechem. It's literally tweak it. A little bit. You raise your finger, it happens. You call the non-Jew, by the way, come over here, take care of my flocks. You've already done enough. Because even that's a distraction. That's Oser Ritzon Shel Mokum. But the person who always needs time out for whatever it is, for his cappuccino, and for his other kind of coffee, his perked coffee, you know what it means. But you add up all the 3 minutes that you're taking out, in a year, comes to, that alone is a substantial amount of time. What about the Torah that you're not studying? That's Einoser. The person at your level, he may not be faulted, but he's Einoser Ritzon Shel Mokum. If that's the case, You have to do your own bidding. Nobody else is doing your bidding. That's Eino Sivritzonu Shamokum. God says, I'm not going to be your lackey. If you're working on my project, I'm here to serve you, to accommodate you. You're my prize employee. That's what you are. But if you're doing your own thing, you know something? If you can do your own thing, I don't have to do your thing. Do it for yourself. Therefore, if a person could afford 8 hours on the golf green, what God should deliver his fortune to him. Go get your own fortune. He's not going to do it. Person says, I spent 20 hours in the office. Workaholic. Because he doesn't see the bracha. So the person who is that kind of person says, I have a right to give charity where I want to give charity. It cost me my family, it cost me my health, it cost me everything. 20 hours for 20 years in the office. I didn't see the light of day. Only went on vacation for 3 days. And I had to get back, so even the vacation wasn't a vacation. You understand? He doesn't see the hand of Hashem. The tzaddik, every move he makes, it's unbelievable. God's in my life. Miracles continuously. It's unbelievable how it happened. I was walking down, a man comes, approaches me, to have a certain product. He said he'll take it himself and he'll pay me 3 times its value because he can't come, and he feels privileged to do business with me. Tzaddik says, it's just unbelievable. What's going on over here? So the tzaddik only sees singing the praises of God, and when it comes to do a mitzvah, he says, of course, it's not even mine. It's a gift of God, everything. The other man says it cost him a pound of flesh. It cost him his health. And has to go into rehab every 3 months to get an infusion to be able to go further, to be more of an alcoholic. This is the craziness of life. But that's what it is. And the aggravation. It's interesting. We read the Chazal, the first portion, a Jew has to know what is the standard. And the Gemara says, Harbi also krib, Shimon Yochai will also be other. Many people follow Shimon Yochai's prescription, they did not succeed. So Reb Chaim Volozhin infers from the statement, many did not, but a minority did. Meaning, the prescription is a correct prescription. The question is, do you have what it takes to succeed? If you could be spiritualized and you're willing to forego many things, Hashem is there on a platinum platter to be fully invested in you. Not to be that you shouldn't be distracted, but who have that level of conviction and dedication to do it. That's the issue. Of course, Reb Shimon Yochai logically makes sense. If you're there for God totally, is God going to distract you with nonsense, with the minutiae of life? The Gemara says, Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda, that because they let the grapes rot on the vine, because Torah is too precious to harvest the grapes. So when Sancheriv, the Machlis Sancheriv was destroyed, the wealth that they were, the spoils of war were multiples, endless times over. Whatever that vineyard could have been worth forever. So what did they do? Chizkiyahu didn't even go to war. He sent Gabriel, the archangel, he says, sharpen your sickle and just wipe them out. And in a moment, the camp of Sancheriv was destroyed, the Syrian camp. That's Reb Shimon Yochai. That was Oser Ritzon L'Shamokum. They were even willing to forego their material. It's coming Shabbos. Read Nachman Hami. What's the consolation? They tell over a story. Just end with the story. Told it in the past. There was this woman who, she was in business with her husband, and she traveled to a town, to a city in Lithuania. It was known as Kovna. Famous. The Slobodki Yeshiva was in Kovna. It was a suburb of Kovna, known as Kiwanis. There's a famous fort in Kiwanis where Reb Chaim Wasserman, with many Jews, were killed, murdered by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam B'Zichron. So this woman came, and in Kovna, she came once a year to buy textiles. That's where she would buy her inventory for the year. And she came with a satchel of cash to purchase the textiles for the year. And somehow she checked into a hotel or the local inn. She misplaced the satchel. She lost it. She nearly lost her mind. If she doesn't locate that satchel, they're out of business. This was the capital for the business. Business would have to close up. How are they going to survive the future? So what does she do? She puts an ad in the local paper. Anybody who finds this satchel will be handsomely rewarded. Okay? A few hours later, somebody knocks on the door. She gave an address in which inn she's staying. And the man says, "I think I found your satchel." She gave the to identify very specific signs of the satchel. It's hers. So she thought the man was going to give it back to her. So the man says, as a child, I learned in Cheder that if an owner loses something and he despairs, the finder has a right to keep it. If I would be a wealthy man, or even a man of mediocre means, I'd give it back to you. But I'm destitute, I can't feed my family, and if halachically I have a right to keep it, I'm going to keep it. Let's go discuss it with the rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Chodan, Spector, the chief rabbi of Kovna. Whatever he decides, he says, I must give it back to you, I'll give it back to you. If he says, I have a right to keep it because you despaired, then I will keep it. The woman is really trembling. She doesn't know what to do. Of course, whatever the halacha dictates, she's going there. So they go to the rabbi. So the Rabbi Yitzchak Chodan, the Chaim Levrocha, asks her, he says, I want to ask you a question. Since you lost the satchel, did you send a telegram to your husband? What happened? She says, no. If I would have, he would have had a heart attack. He would have been upset with me. He would have sent me a divorce immediately. I would never tell him. I wanted to see how it's going to play out. Didn't inform him. Okay? That's the first question I asked him. Do you have any legal rights to the business? She says, no. The business, the enterprise is fully in my husband's name. She said, he asked her, did you despair? Yes. He says, but your despair means nothing because you're not the proprietor. And if your husband is unaware of it, it's called Yir Shelo Midas. He's unaware that he was supposed to despair, so it's irrelevant. Therefore, you have a right to what? To get the money back. So she was relieved, sigh of relief. She gets a satchel of money. She pays the man gladly the reward that she said she would pay him. Okay? So Rabbi Yitzchak Chodan was very moved by this. He says, Mashiach, it's been endless years since the Churban Abayis. We're waiting for the Binyan Bayis Shlishi, the third building of the third temple. It hasn't happened. We've given up already. We've despaired, chas v'sholem. But the question is, but who's the proprietor? God's the balabayas. He's the proprietor. He's the master. We're all we're employees. Do we have a say in the matter? We despair, it's real, but he hasn't despaired. And because he hasn't despaired, it's still happening. Nachmu Ami. It's happening. That's the consolation to us. It's Hashem, we should merit to see the building of the third Beis HaMikdash.